Joining us now, Alfredo Ortiz. He is the CEO of Job Creators Network, which he had the vision to start, and also their affiliate taxcutswork.com. Alfredo, great to have you, man.
John, it's great to have you. And boy, that West Virginia stop, wasn't that great, just seeing that optimism sky high in that room?
I had so much there, and you could feel, Alfredo, the enthusiasm building. This is why I think the Republicans are going to hold the House. You can't go to these rallies now and not feel it. I mean, it was a Thursday afternoon. Place was out in the middle of nowhere in Wheeling.
Yeah.
And even in Wheeling, it was like beyond Wheeling. It was at that conference center. That place was packed, standing room only. The enthusiasm there was off the charts. But I got to tell you, Alfredo, you really did a great job in kind of laying out what the tax cuts mean and how they have translated into so many jobs. And I was excited to get you on today so that you could share some of what you said at the panel with our audience.
Well, John, it's really funny. I think your listeners and you and I certainly recall this. Remember, I think there was a certain person called Nancy Pelosi that said the tax cuts work was going to be the beginning of Armageddon. If you remember that, Armageddon.
Yes.
Well, I have to tell you this, John. If this is what you just listed off just before I got on the segment, if that describes Armageddon, give me Armageddon every single day, because this country is back and it's rolling. And when you look at what's happening, for example, in the EU and China, they're announcing a slowdown in their economy while ours is booming at 4.1%. Why is that? Because they're starting to feel the tariff impact, and that's why Donald Trump has done a terrific job of understanding where the leverage is on this front. And the tax cut piece, the initiative that was passed, the legislation that was passed last year, was the impetus for this kind of growth. We said it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen because we know as free market believers that is the best thing to do, and that the free enterprise system brings economic prosperity. And the saddest part, though, John, as you know too, the Democrats said, vote us back in office and we will take that all away from you.
First of all, they said it was crumbs. But
right.
Now I'm trying to figure out, for a small business owner, I'm trying to figure out what the Democrats' policy is. And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because, look, in 2006 when they took over, Alfredo, if you go back to then, that was the last time they took over. Enter Nancy Pelosi stage left. But, I mean, it was clear, right? They wanted to get out of Iraq. They thought the war was a disaster. George Bush had no plan. I was opposed to the war, both wars, so that's a separate issue. So I kind of got it. Like, I got their message. I don't know what their message is now other than they don't like Trump's tweets. I don't get what their alternative is to this booming economy. Do you?
Well, and the funny thing is we know what the alternative is, and that was the Obama administration, right? And that didn't work too well, right? And so we have the difference. We know what their type of leadership is going to bring. So why we would ever want to bring that back is beyond me, first of all. But, it was really interesting. Your question on what is their strategy with small business, I think, is a really great question. And one of the things, several years ago, I had a conversation out in D.C. with one of the top, think tank organizations out there, and their leader there. And he said one thing that was very interesting, because I had the same question. I said, I just don't understand. What are Democrats thinking? Small business in this country represents 30 million small business owners that employ 60 million people. We're talking almost 100 million people, right, that are impacted by the success or failure of small business. And he said one really quick thing, which I went out in my head and said, wow, this is incredible. He said, because small business owners are very difficult to control. They would rather have large businesses really succeed because they can control 2, 3, 4 large banks, right, the Democrats.
Right.
But they can't control 30 million small business owners. And that's why they don't actually want small business owners to succeed, because they can't control them.
I think you're absolutely right, because at the end of the day, they can't tell them what to do. And why I really love the Job Creators Network and what you've done. You guys are a nonpartisan organization. I want to just explain it to everybody. Mission is to educate employees of Main Street America so that you can protect the 85 million people who depend on the success of small business. And we talk about hiring, and you talk about jobs. Amazon will get the big play because they'll come into a certain area and they'll hire a bunch of people, or the big companies. But that dwarfs, Alfredo, in comparison to the number of people that small businesses hire. It's not even close.
That's right,
small
John.
businesses.
Two-thirds of new job growth is in the hands of small business owners. And I have to tell you that small business owner optimism is really sky high. About 3 years ago or so, we started a campaign called Bring Small Businesses Back, because when I was going around the country just talking to people, I realized one thing. They felt so discouraged, small business owners across this country. They basically would say it. I mean, sometimes I would be sitting at a table at a conference, and I could see tears starting to roll down their eyes because they were so devastated by the fact that they put their entire, many times their life savings, they would put their house on the line, right? And just for the government to continuously batter these small businesses between over-regulation and over-taxation, and then, frankly, the lack of access to capital and credit that took place because Dodd-Frank decimated over 2,000 community banks. A lot of these were rural banks that helped small business owners. Yep. They were ready to give up. I'm telling you, fast forward to today, that optimism is so high. They are ready to invest. We have on taxcutswork.com, we encourage everybody to go to that site to really find out what is the truth in terms of what's going on with the economy, and especially on our small business owners. We have over 3,500 stories. That's 3,500 stories from small business owners already that are coming and saying, we want to tell our story about how things are working for us. These are everyday small business owners, Main Street America, talking about how it's helping them. According to the mainstream media, none of this is occurring, which is just really, we ran an ad saying they're operating in a bizarro world here.
I mean, it's just crazy what they're doing, but you're so right, and I want to encourage our listeners to go to taxcutswork.com, taxcutswork.com, and you can check your savings right there. You can actually plug your numbers in. You're going to get a feel of what your taxes are going to be. But, I mean, you're so right, Alfredo. And by the way, we're with Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network and of his website, taxcutswork.com. This is a nonpartisan organization promoting small businesses. And by the way, there's over 29 million small business owners in the United States, and they employ 56 million people, meaning 85 million Americans depend on small businesses. Just think about that number and how it is. And even, look, I run a small business. I've got 2 full-time employees. I've got a bunch of vendors that really depend on us. And the tax cut for us has allowed me, Alfredo, to invest in new equipment. I mean, we just bought this. Just this year, for example, we bought a new remote system. We've got a second one and several of them that allows me to go virtually anywhere in the world. Now, I also have a portable satellite internet unit that we were able to buy. So I've got that. So I can go and broadcast anywhere in the world. And all combined, that was probably $15,000, right? But the thing is, I can write all of it off in 2018. I don't have to wait over a 5-year period. So it's little things like that.
That's
now,
right.
That allows me to buy that. We're looking at bringing a new person
John,
on.
if I could run for 1 second, because that one little piece there that you just mentioned is probably one of the most impactful things that we felt so far from the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, is this idea of immediate expensing, the idea of being able to immediately write off. Because in the past, you'd have to depreciate it over a certain amount of time, right? You could only maybe 5 years or 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, right, depending on what you were buying. But that is so big. Like you just said, $15,000 right off the top that you would not have been able to do, and you probably wouldn't have made that investment. Just like you, I was doing a TV interview. I went to a studio that was a satellite studio, and it was just a private business. They were running that. And I started talking to him about the tax cuts. And he goes, that has been so great. He goes, I've been able to invest in a new panel that I've been waiting for years to do. Couldn't really afford it, but because of this immediate expensing, I went out and got it, and I can do it right away. There was another lady who's part of our network, Job Creators Network, HM Manufacturing, Nicole Walter, great CEO of this company, employs 16 people, and she is out going to buy a $500,000 piece of equipment. It's a $3.5 million company, but she believes she's going to be able to double the size of her business because of that one purchase. And she said the biggest reason and the only reason she really did it is because of the immediate expensing and what was done in the actual Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So this has an enormous impact on the economy. Nobody's really talking about it in the mainstream media. That's why we have to get this message out, John.
Well, look, there's no question about it, because if you're a small business owner, you really understand it, and we don't have $15,000 or $20,000 to throw around. We were able to make that investment because of the tax cut and then write it off, so it all worked. And that gives us the ability to expand our business, go to more places, be a better show for our listeners get more revenue, and then we're looking at, adding a third full-time person on in 2019, which is another job, incredible. Another person paying taxes and benefits. I mean, all this stuff is critical. Now, we're with Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and chief executive officer of the Job Creators Network, and where he has led the defense of small businesses from the onslaught of bad government policies. One other thing, Alfredo, that I want to mention, if there's any small business owner, and when I say small business, if you're driving Lyft or Uber, that's a small business, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to, it's a small business. And one of the other things that nobody is taking into consideration is if you own a small business today, you get a 20% pass-through credit. Now, what that means is, let's say you're a driver for Lyft, and I take Lyft. Let's say you're a driver for that, and you make, expenses and everything, you make $80,000, all right? Well, you're not going to get taxed on 80 the way you were in 2017. You're going to get taxed on 64,000 because when you pass through the 80, 20% savings comes right off the top. So instead of paying taxes on 80,000, you save 16. You're paying taxes on 64,000, but you made 80. I mean, that is a huge difference that nobody even talks about.
John, you hit another great point there. I mean, and that's, again, we need to keep talking about that. That's why we're collecting these kinds of stories on taxcutswork.com so that we can really tell the American public what is actually happening, real-life stories of American small businesses across this country, how they're using this, how they're reinvesting back in their businesses. Because, again, according to mainstream media, this is like the worst thing ever that's ever happened, right? It's like they are completely ignoring all the positive, facts that are coming here. But that 20% pass-through deduction that you just mentioned for Main Street small businesses really is a major factor for them, and it is able to create an environment for them where they can reinvest back in their business. Right? Any small business owner understands what it's like to invest in their business and the risks that they take. So any kind of opportunity where you have to really take some of that and reinvest it back. I mean, this was what the government used to take from them. Right? So now that money's coming back to them so they can reinvest, just like you did, right? You decided how to use that money to reinvest back in your business, right? To get some additional equipment so that you can generate additional revenue. You basically sounds like you're going to increase your, hiring by 50%, right? You have two, you're going to hire one. That's a 50% increase.
50% increase.
I mean, it's
Michael
crazy.
will be so happy.
Yeah, exactly. So we do have to keep talking about this. And the one thing, even last year, people said, "Oh, it's not enough for our small business owners." We always said it wasn't a perfect bill, and we can do more, and we are advocating for more for our small business owners. But what an amazing first step! That was the deepest cut that small business owners, from a tax perspective, have felt in over 40 years.
And that's why the economy is booming right now. And the tax cut hasn't even taken place yet. That's the thing. It's all speculative. So even our investment was made on 2018, what we think is going to happen. Well, once 2018 comes along and our taxes go down on the same income dramatically, and it's dramatic for a small company like ours, then there's going to be extra money there. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're not going to put it in the mattress, right? We're going to buy something else, hire someone, expand something else. We're going to do something, increase our travel. If we do that, more airlines get paid. I mean, that is how the thing works, and that's why we're so excited about it. Hey, I've only got 2 minutes. I want to get to the op-ed that you did the other day on trade, and this is why, Alfredo, we get along so great. You're a free trader. I'm not. I am a protectionist, and some people want to call it strategic trade. I'm not afraid of the P word. I'm for tariffs. I'm a protectionist. I have been for a very long time. But you made a great point the other day. As a free trader, you said, because the economy is doing so great, if we're going to fix these trade deals, now's the time.
That's right, John. It's what every business person actually does with their business. Well, you just described it right now yourself for your business, right? When times are good, that's when you take the opportunity to invest back in your business. And that is exactly what President Trump decided to do with tariffs. It was a massively broken system for decades. And nobody wanted to really do something, right? People always said, "Oh, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix that." Nobody ever did anything about it. President Trump knew that he had a positive, economy on his hands that could afford a little bit of a hit right, so that they can reinvest, so we can reinvest back in our economy and fix a very, very broken trade system across the globe. And the one thing he really understands, and this is very, very clear, he understands the power of leverage. He understands that the United States, as the largest consumption economy, has the ability to use that leverage to make things happen and to make the right trade deals happen. And you see already the EU and China are already, EU came to us basically, and they started, renegotiating stuff. We got President Trump having them buy soybeans from us to basically say, screw you, China. You want to raise your tariffs on us on soybeans? Well, then I'm going to go to the EU and have the EU buy the soybeans. We don't need you. And so, but again, this was the opportunity that President Trump took to reinvest back in his business, and he knows very well that there are people out there that are hurting from it, and that's why he got the $12 billion in aid for our farmers, and he's just saying, please just hang in there with me. We've got the economy humming. We've got to get this right. And, I think, the American farmers are saying, President Trump, we understand what you're doing. We understand it. It does hurt a little bit. It stings. But we're standing next to you, and we're standing with you on this one. And that is the one thing that we wrote in that op-ed. This is exactly the time to do it. You invest back in your business when times are good. And that's what President Trump is doing as a good chief executive officer of our country.
That's right.
He's investing back into the economy and back into the American worker, and that's why we got
Alfredo,
the reaction we did
I got to take off.
in West Virginia.
I got to take off. We're at the bottom of the hour. I got to take off. Alfredo Ortiz, thank you. Hey, more information, taxcutswork.com, taxcutswork.com.